There are no dragons here.
No chosen one prophecy, no ancient bloodline, no god-tier starting skill. Just a college student, a thatched hut the size of a toilet stall, and 63 ants eating his only food. His name is Jang Hyun, and before all of this, he was nobody special. A contemporary college student who lived alone after his grandfather passed, worked part-time to stay fit, and spent his free hours reading internet novels about people who got transported to other worlds.
He never imagined he would become one of them.
One moment, he was in his school dormitory, ready to sleep. The next, he woke up coughing in a freezing hut barely large enough to turn around in. A crackling bonfire, the only thing between him and darkness so absolute he could not see his own hand. Then the voice came, not from outside, not from speakers, from directly inside his skull, calm and precise, like a system reading terms and conditions to a man who had no choice but to agree. Welcome to the dark world, survivor. The voice laid out the rules in clean, cold sentences. Keep your bonfire burning at night, or things in the dark will find you. Daytime is safer but shorter than you think. Use every minute. Upgrade your shelter, because the hut you are sitting in is the worst possible protection against what is coming. Read the survival manual and guard it well, because if it is destroyed, your shelter takes the damage. And finally, a natural disaster will be drawn every month. Good luck favors those who strive to survive. The voice cut off. Jang Hyun sat still for a moment, smoke stinging his eyes, cold seeping through the gaps in the thatch. Then he took a breath, stood up, and started looking for the manual the voice had mentioned. He found it in the corner, a black handbook the size of a notebook, sitting beside a chipped stone axe that did not even qualify as a ranked item. The moment he touched the cover, information rose directly into his mind. The manual was the shelter's core. Damage it, and the shelter suffers. Lose it, and the cold alone would finish him before any monster could. He flipped it open carefully. The pages were textured like animal hide and updated in real time. Temperature, weather, time remaining until dawn, all scrolling like a live display. Outdoor temperature, -7.1. Night remaining, 2 hours, 32 minutes, and counting down. The second page was a chat channel. World population, over 8 billion, and dropping by hundreds of thousands per second while he watched. His stomach dropped. 8 billion was the entire population of Blue Star. Everyone had transmigrated. The World Channel was a wall of scrolling text he could not parse fast enough to read, so he switched to the regional channel, 10,000 people in his zone. The messages were a cross-section of everything 8 billion terrified humans would say in their first 5 minutes of existence in a new world. Someone begging for the police, not understanding yet that the police were also here. Someone bragging about playing construction games as if that would help. Someone asking for spare clothes because they had been sleeping naked and were going to freeze to death. And then, mid-scroll, a message cut off. A voice in the channel said he could hear wolves outside, that he had opened his door for a moment, that the wind had blown his bonfire out. Then screaming. Then nothing. The regional counter clicked from 10,000 to 9,999. The chat went silent for 10 full seconds. No joke, no bravado, no question. Just the weight of a number. Jang Hyun stared at his own bonfire, crackling in the center of the floor, and felt his heartbeat in his ears. He did not sleep deeply that night. He dozed in half-hour intervals, never trusting the dark enough to go under, jolting awake at every sound from outside. With 20 minutes left before dawn, he slapped himself awake and ran through a full set of broadcast gymnastics in the tiny hut, just to get blood moving. He knew warming up before strenuous work prevented injury, and every minute of daytime would matter. When sunrise came, it came fast. The panel updated. Outdoor temperature 5.5, daytime remaining 8 hours. 8 hours. That was all the light this world was going to give him. He stepped outside cautiously, stone axe in hand, listening before he moved. Dew on the grass, birdsong from unfamiliar trees, insects and shrubs he had never seen before. Peaceful, almost beautiful, which only made him grip the axe tighter.
Nothing kind had brought 8 billion people here.
He counted the regional dead, 9,982.
More than a dozen gone in a single night.
He stepped further from the shelter and discovered the first hard truth about this world in under 10 minutes of woodcutting.
A thin sapling, barely 10 centimeters across, took him 8 full minutes to fell with the stone axe.
1 unit of wood. He sat down, rubbed his arm, and did the math.
The shelter upgrade required 100 units of wood and 20 units of stone.
At his pace, gathering 100 units of wood would take at minimum 2 full days of unbroken labor, and rest and food would cut that further. Blind grinding was not the answer.
He pivoted east to explore first. And 15 minutes later, he found something that changed everything. Wedged in the shadow of a bush near the dark border of the territory, a wooden treasure chest. The manual tagged it black ironite. He dragged it open and found 3 items. A can of fermented herring he immediately marked as a trade good rather than food. A plain bottle of water from a farmer's wife that tasted sweeter than any drink he had ever had, and a small water bucket blueprint. He stared at the blueprint for a long moment. The dark world had no infrastructure, no supply chain, no market yet, just 8 billion people with no containers and no way to store or carry water.
A bucket that held 10 liters of water, producible from 3 units of wood in 10 minutes of crafting, was not a black iron item.
It was a golden goose. He used the blueprint on the spot and mastered the technique.
He spent the rest of the morning splitting his time, 1 hour on exploration, which revealed a stone quarry to the west and nothing else, and several hours chopping trees and crafting buckets at the edge of the birch grove. By the time the sky began to darken, he had stockpiled 7 buckets and 12 loose units of wood.
His hands were stiff, his arms aching, but as he prepared to head back, he noticed something in the undergrowth.
A chest, sitting in the open, radiating a dark green metallic luster he nearly mistook for a leaf shadow.
Bronze grade.
He opened it with shaking hands.
4 items. An iron-hard baguette he could barely chew, a disposable lighter with 2/3 of its fuel remaining, a bronze axe that whistled when he swung it through the air, and a 4th item that made the axe slip from his grip entirely. A slender glass bottle filled with pale purple liquid that shimmered in the last of the sunset.
Fountain of Mutation, silver ink.
Placed in the ground, it produced 100 milliliters of mutated spring water per day. Ingestion caused unknown mutations in any living creature, with effects proportional to the amount consumed.
Silver rank from a bronze chest.
1 in 10 odds, and he had hit it on the first try.
He allowed himself exactly 1 second to feel the shock of it, then tucked everything under his arm and sprinted back to the shelter before full dark fell.
That night, with the bonfire steady and the hut locked tight, he listed his 7 buckets on the trade channel at 12 units of wood apiece and posted a single message to the world channel.
They sold in under 10 seconds. Private orders flooded in.
He listed the herring can and a half-eaten baguette, and those sold too.
Then he turned to the Fountain of Mutation, dug a hollow in the center of the shelter floor, poured the purple liquid in, and watched the panel confirm the fountainhead had formed.
100 milliliters per day.
Sustainable.
Before he could open the trade channel again, the first day settlement broadcast fired.
Resources gathered, items found, everything tallied into a point score that determined lottery tier.
His total came to 293 points, silver tier, by a comfortable margin.
A silver-white compass-like item dropped into his palm, and the Dark World's first day closed, with Jang Hien feeling something he had not felt since waking in that freezing hut.
Momentum.
The lottery compass spun under his nervous fingers, the pointer dragging across etched grids until it settled, and a silver light flashed.
A beast-skin scroll bearing a purple eye
landed in his palm.
Eye of Taming, silver rank.
Uses spiritual power to tame creatures with weaker spiritual power than the user.
Number of creatures controlled scales with spiritual power.
Beast Tamer, Janghyun bought.
That was what this was.
He used the scroll before he could second-guess it, and the pain hit like thousands of needles driving through his left eye simultaneously.
He dropped to his knees and nearly dug the eye out before the agony cut off. 30 seconds later, replaced by confirmation that he had learned Eye of Taming, silver rank.
He was drenched in cold sweat, heart still slamming, making a mental note that scrolls would only ever be used inside a secure shelter from this point forward.
His left pupil had gone light purple.
He did not know that yet. What he did know was that his eye felt different, a faint instinct running through it, like the ability to reach out and simply stop something in its tracks.
He needed something to test it on.
The dark world provided. When he opened the chest where he had left the baguette, 63 soybean-sized black ants with scythe-shaped mandibles were feasting on it, and a tenth of the bread was already gone.
His first reaction was outrage. His second was strategy.
These were perfect test subjects.
He focused his gaze on the nearest ant. Purple flickered at the edge of his left eye, and the ant froze mid-bite.
A connection clicked open.
He told it to move in a small circle.
It obeyed precisely.
He swept his gaze across the rest of the colony, and one by one they froze in place, like a pause button had been pressed on each of them, until 63 ants stood motionless on the floor of his shelter.
A light pressure settled in his skull, a ceiling on how many creatures he could hold at once, but nothing painful.
He had an army.
Small, pathetic, not even rank, but an army.
And sitting in the center of the shelter floor was a bottle of purple liquid that mutated any living creature that drank it.
He did not hesitate.
He ordered all 63 ants to march to the spring hollow he had dug and drink.
What happened next was not clean.
22 of them swelled and burst.
Most survivors bloated grotesquely, extra legs growing from wrong places, mandibles dissolving, abdomens inflating past function.
8 stood apart.
Thumb-sized, dozens of times larger than before.
Darker, shinier, with 10-centimeter mandibles shaped like matching scythes.
Black scythe hunting ant, black iron rank.
Ability, 10-fold biting force.
Ants that could gnaw through iron-hard bread before mutation, now with 10 times that force behind each strike.
8 of them.
Not enough for an army, but enough to find the queen.
The next morning, he sent them to hunt for the colony nest and turned to the second problem, the shelter upgrade mission the system had broadcast while he slept. Top 10% globally earned a resource package. Top 100 regionally earned a skill selection gift, quality scaling with rank.
He wanted first place.
He opened the trade channel and listed all 7 buckets, piercing the market at 12 wood per piece.
He sold them in seconds.
Then he posted on the World Channel for the first time, advertising small water buckets at 12 wood, and within seconds his private messages were flooded. He also listed portions of the mutated spring water at 13 wood each, pricing the exchange to push buyers towards stone rather than wood.
The trade trap worked exactly as planned.
16 stone arrived in under 2 minutes.
The wood gap was manageable.
And when a buyer named Song Ha DM'd him offering a trade, 100 multi-year winter wheat seeds, 3 bottles of ripening agent, and a 2-color goji berry in exchange for 20 milliliters of spring water and 5 buckets, he froze.
Not because the price was unfair.
Because it was far above anything he had expected.
His own floor had been 30 seeds, 1 bottle, and the berry.
She was offering more than 3 times his floor, unprompted.
He tried to push back out of embarrassment, and she explained calmly.
She valued his development potential.
The spring water was a silver rank sustainable resource, and she was willing to take a risk on a person who showed early signs of serious capability.
Long-term cooperation was the framing, and partnership in the dark world was how survivors stayed alive past the first week.
He thought about it for 30 seconds and agreed.
Happy cooperation, she said.
Happy cooperation, he replied. He hit the shelter upgrade requirement shortly after and triggered it.
The broadcast fired.
Top 10% globally for upgrade speed. Resource gift package.
And then sharper, louder.
Congratulations, you are the first survivor in this region to upgrade your shelter.
Reward, skill selection gift package, gold rank.
He exhaled slowly.
First place.
The cheap sell losses had been earned back with compounding interest.
The gold skill selection card produced 3 options: elemental affinity water, berserk, and species contract.
He read each carefully.
Water affinity was worthless without water-based skills he did not have.
Berserk could save his life in a clutch moment, but the weakened state that followed was unspecified in duration, and a day or two of helplessness in this world was a slow execution. Species contract read vague, greatly enhances control over a contracted species, but it pointed in the same direction as the Eye of Taming and the Spring Water already had.
He committed to Beast Tamer. He picked species contract.
The system asked for a subject.
He had only one tamed species. He named a black scythe hunting ant.
Selected contracted species, ants.
Species contract successfully established with the ant tribe group. The contracted species cannot be changed.
He stared at the confirmation for a long moment.
Cannot be changed.
His dream of a dragon knight had just been legally murdered by 63 ants who had been eating his baguette.
He sat with that for exactly 3 minutes, then looked at the readout the scale now gave him on each hunting ant: potential rank, mutation type probability, current evolution success rate, the resource that boosted it, and made peace.
Cultivation maps for every ant in his colony.
Without this skill, breeding stronger ants would be guesswork in the dark.
With it, he was a precision factory. He chose the warmth package as his global reward, received a cotton suit and a cotton quilt, put the suit on immediately, and felt his fingers thaw for the first time since arrival.
Then he built the shelter facilities unlocked by the upgrade: storage cabinet, wooden bed, dual-use stove, and finally slept in a real bed with a real quilt, and the difference was enough to make him understand how close he had been to breaking in the cold.
Night 2 closed around him, and as the stove burned steadily and the hunting ants waited in disciplined silence for morning, he let himself rest.
Day 2 arrived with a day-shortening announcement and a cold wave warning.
7 days until an extreme cold event that would shut down outdoor exploration for a full month.
The regional counter had fallen from 10,000 to 9,531 overnight.
Almost 500 people. Gone. He closed the chat, opened the trade channel, and posted a buy request. Large quantities of various ant species. Queen required. Resources or items offered. Then he stepped outside.
The hunting ants had been busy since dawn.
He set them loose with orders to locate their original queen and bring her back, then turned to the morning's first task, exploring east before the birch grove got any thinner.
Midway through that exploration, he stopped.
The dark borders should have been 30 meters ahead.
It wasn't.
He messaged Sengha, and she confirmed. Shelter Level 2 expanded the territory from 300 meters to 500 meters radius.
But the new ring contained mutated beasts, and she warned him clearly, without strong combat means, do not explore yet.
He retreated to the birch grove and chopped for 2 hours.
Then a signal pulsed through the species contract, and he spun to see the lead hunting ant marching toward him, carrying a fat abdomen queen, while the other 7 hunting ants herded over 100 black scythe ants in a formation like officers escorting prisoners.
He dropped the axe and ran.
Purple flickered in his left eye.
The queen went still under his gaze, and the connection settled. Black scythe ant queen. No rank. Potential. Silver rank.
Type: reproductive. Current mutation evolution success rate: 48%.
The moment she was tamed, every ant in the colony behind her stopped their commotion
and stood obediently in place.
One queen.
One connection.
Entire colony controlled.
The spiritual power burden of managing hundreds of individual ants had just evaporated.
He immediately turned to the trade channel and filtered for flesh.
The queen's mutation rate needed to hit 100% before she drank the spring water, and he needed ranked meat to push her there fast.
He found 2 listings from a single seller, Will Porter, selling mutated rabbit and mutated wild boar meat at scale.
He messaged Will, negotiated a long-term cooperation framing, and landed a deal, 1 gin each of rabbit and boar meat, plus 2 bottles of beast blood as a bonus.
He set the queen to feeding the moment the trade clear.
Black iron rabbit meat pushed her rate from 48 to 50 and climbing.
Bronze boar meat hit harder and faster, spiking the number upward in visible jumps.
Then the queen ate too much and stopped moving, sprawled beside the meat, too full to continue.
He laughed before he could stop himself.
He ordered her to digest, then keep eating, and went back to chopping.
Half an hour later, she was at 100%.
He brought her to the spring water hollow and watched her drink.
Her body expanded rapidly, twisted, then settled.
Black Scythe Hunter Ant Queen, Black Iron rank.
Ability, rapid reproduction.
She would breed black iron hunting ants directly from this point forward. No spring water needed on individual workers.
The numbers bottleneck was solved.
While the queen and her 8 hunting ant harem began breeding, a message arrived from Sangha.
She had found something while loosening soil for her plants and offered it to him for free.
Century Ant Queen. No rank. 3 pairs of compound eyes, swift in movement, specialized in reconnaissance.
He stared at the description for a full 3 seconds.
Scouts.
He had a combat colony under the Hunter Queen, and now a recon colony from an ally who had not even asked for payment. He pushed back. He could not accept something this valuable for free, and they settled on a trade of bronze-grade sandalwood wood for the Century Ant Queen and her colony. The Century Ant Queen, purple flickered into his control, read out at 67% mutation rate already, with plant materials as her food source. Cheap to feed, fast to evolve, and purpose-built for intelligence work. He gave both queens ranked food and put them on spring water within the hour.
2 queens evolved to black iron by nightfall.
The hunting ant workers grew to fist-sized, jet black, mandibles longer than their bodies like paired scythes.
The Century ant workers developed basic agility, and when he let one move to test, it crossed the shelter floor faster than he could walk, at a body size smaller than his thumbnail.
He built the ant nest in the shelter floor beside the spring water hollow, and dropped the ant nest nucleus, bronze grade, purchased from Songhai in exchange for mutated spring water, into the center.
Breeding speed plus 20%.
Food consumption plus 30%, which he immediately recognized as a feeding multiplier that would accelerate mutation rates rather than tax them. Both queens settled into the shared nest, an ant colony that combined combat and recon in a single structure that no naturalist on Blue Star would believe was real. Day 3 opened with a temporary mission that suited him better than any mission the system could have designed. 3 temporary chests randomly generated in every survivor's territory. Collect them by count and speed. Top 100 regionally earned skill selection rewards, quality scaling on rank. The field of 10,000 was searching by eye in the snow that had started falling that morning, through territories now cluttered with mutated beasts.
Zhang Yan had 150 bronze century ants with compound eyes and agility that matched his running speed.
He split them into 8 squads, 1 per compass direction, orders to net search the territory and report all chests and all mutated beasts. Then he sent the hunting ants behind them to carry back whatever the sentry ants found. The first 2 chests arrived at his feet in under 15 minutes, carried by hunting ants who had crossed the territory and returned without being asked twice. He opened both. Black iron yielded cotton socks, a water bottle, and a black iron pickaxe. Finally, the tool to mine stone properly. Bronze yielded white bread, a black iron machete, cold medicine, and something that stopped him cold.
Quick hemostatic bandage, bronze grade.
A craftable bandage that resolved blood loss fast.
In a world with no hospitals, no doctors, and mutated beasts that opened wounds with tusks and claws and fangs, a producible bandage was not a bronze item.
It was a currency that had not yet been invented.
He used the blueprint immediately and set it aside for later crafting.
The third chest was the problem. A sentry ant squad found it 360 meters from shelter, inside the mutated beast ring, sitting under a massive earthen mound, being used as a sleeping pillow by a 300-kilogram mutated wild boar.
He climbed a tall tree, scanned for 10 minutes, and confirmed only the boar.
Then, he ordered 40 century ants to harass the boar, swarm into nostrils, ears, the tender corners of its eyes, places where thick skin provided no protection, and 10 hunting ants to wait in a tree near the chest, ready to move the moment the boar charged away.
He cleared the area himself.
An angry roar erupted behind him, the ground shaking with the boar's charge, and he jogged back toward shelter without looking behind him.
20 minutes later, a single hunting ant trundled across the snow toward him, carrying the chest.
He took it. Then the broadcast fired before he could even open it.
Survivor, congratulations on finding all 3 temporary chests in 49 minutes, 53 seconds.
Temporary mission complete.
Your count and speed rank first in the area.
Reward, 1 self-selected gold rank item.
A second broadcast followed immediately.
Total chests collected in this region has reached 5,000.
All remaining uncollected chests have disappeared.
Mission ended. First place, 49 minutes and 53 seconds, and no other survivor in 10,000 had found all 3.
He held the gold gift box and considered the options it produced.
3 items floated before him. A pursuit longbow with auto-correction, a detection telescope that saw through darkness past 500 meters, and a gene manipulator, an instrument that extracted gene fragments from biological flesh and implanted them into other organisms. He looked at the gene manipulator, and the entire shape of what he was building opened in front of him. Mutated beast genes fused into hunting ants for raw power.
Avian genes into sentry ants for flight-capable scouts that nothing on the ground could intercept. Aquatic genes for water reconnaissance.
Spider venom for lethality at contact. Specialized combat strains per ant, tuned off the production line. Every ant a different tool. He chose the gene manipulator. He tested it immediately on a bottle of mutated wild boar blood Will had included as a gift.
5 gene fragments extracted.
He placed a hunting ant on the platform, ran the fusion, and watched it thrash violently on the surface for 5 minutes before going still.
Then it stood up, charged outside on his command, and ate an entire birch tree in 10 minutes. When it turned back to face him, it was no longer an ant. Small, piglet-sized, thick bristles across a jet-black carapace, mandibles half a meter wide. No one who saw it would call it an ant.
He fused 19 more.
And then he turned the 20 of them toward the earthen mound where the mutated wild boar was still recovering from the century ant harassment.
He watched from 100 meters. The boar charged. The 20 gene-fused hunting ants hit it like a moving wall.
What had been a 300-kilogram bronze beast with thick skin and a charge ability was gone in seconds.
Only a pool of blood remained.
2 days ago, he had crawled away from a mutated squirrel with 2 gashes through his cotton jacket.
Today, he watched from comfortable distance while his ants erased a bronze boar without a single loss.
The dark world had not changed.
The boar yielded 30 gin of meat, 1 bronze beast core, the condensed life essence that explained why meat yields were always lower than the animal's body weight suggested, plus hide, tusks, and organs.
The organs went straight to the hunter queen as mutation fuel.
The meat he split between himself and the colony. And the beast core he held and did not sell, because anything condensed from the life force of a ranked mutated creature was worth keeping until he understood it better.
The queen's mutation rate had been climbing steadily on organ and meat feeds since bronze evolution.
By nightfall, she was at 87%.
4 gen of bronze boar meat pushed her to 100. She drank from the spring water, and the mutation ran for 5 full minutes, longer than the black iron evolution had taken, her body swelling, the mandible she had carried as a fighter receding as her reproductive capacity expanded, silver ring patterns appearing across a now 70-centimeter abdomen.
Black Scythe Hunter Ant Queen, silver rank.
New ability, rapid development. On command, she could inject energy into larvae and produce fully mature hunting ants in hours rather than days.
Emergency army from nothing, at the cost of a large energy expenditure. He gave her a name.
Mo Wu.
Ink Moom.
She straightened her upper body and waved her small scythes in what looked unmistakably like satisfaction. Then she spoke, not in words exactly, but in a rustling signal, the species contract decoded directly into his understanding.
Master.
The meat. Delicious. He answered on autopilot and then froze because the voice had come from the ant.
Not a biological signal.
A message with content and emotional texture.
The silver evolution had pushed Mo Wu across an intelligence threshold that ordinary ants did not cross.
Silver was not just a damage and durability upgrade. It was a mind upgrade.
Which meant the silver mutated beasts now roaming his expanded level 3 territory were not just physically stronger than the boar.
They were smarter.
The comfort of the upgrade evaporated.
He took a slow breath and looked at the night ahead of him and planned.
He settled Mo Wu into the nest with her harem, 8 hunting ants he upgraded to silver before sending them in, and turned to the workbench. 3 materials needed for the hemostatic bandage: adhesive, coagulation serum, plant fiber. He had none of them yet, but he had contacts, and he worked through each one systematically. Adhesive from a seller named Yo Heisel, 10 units at 50 wood. Coagulation serum from Will, who needed the bandage badly enough that he offered 15 portions free.
Jang Hyun refused the gift and paid market price instead.
Plant fiber from Song Ha, who had 39 surplus portions from stock plants and tried to give them all away.
He refused again and traded spring water for the lot.
He sat at the workbench and assembled the first bandage.
The bench reduced crafting time and fatigue both, its surface smooth and the operation efficient, in a way the floor and axe had never been. He listed it in a trade with Will, 1 bandage for 200 wood and 10 gen of bronze boar meat, and Will's reply came back instantly.
Part is the price.
Part is gratitude.
Your bandage is a very valuable medical item.
Beyond ordinary resource pricing. Unless resources are scarce, do not sell it easily.
He sat with that warning for a long moment.
He had not seen a single medical item in the trade channel.
A bronze bandage with a complex 4-material craft chain, in a world with no hospitals, no first aid, and hunters bleeding out after every beast encounter, was not trading at bronze price.
It was trading at whatever the market would bear, and the market did not know it existed yet.
The dark world might be deliberately keeping medical supplies scarce.
He filed the hypothesis and kept crafting.
By night's end, the shelter had been upgraded to level 3, an 80-square-meter exquisite wooden house with a stone-laid base, walls that held warmth against the dropping outdoor temperature, and new facilities that changed everything.
Level 1 farmland, 100 square meters of monster-immune protected growing space.
Level 1 animal pen, 100 square meters of protected area for raising creatures.
Level 1 workbench, already proven indispensable.
He built all 3, planted the new wheat seed batch in the farmland, transferred the ant nest to the pen, and moved the nursery seedlings to the outdoor farmland where sunlight could reach them properly.
Then he cooked.
He had been handing ranked meat to the ants for 2 days while surviving on rye bread.
He had the resources now.
He washed the black iron machete, cut large slabs of boar and rabbit, skewered them on split sticks, and roasted them over the stove.
The smell hit his brain before the first piece was done.
He posted one line on the World Channel asking about seasonings.
The chat detonated.
He immediately regretted burning a World Channel message on cumin.
He disabled public DMs and messaged Seongha directing.
She traded him cumin, chili powder, and a green pepper powder cultivated from a mutated plant she had been developing. 3 seasonings for 2 boar skewers and 2 rabbit skewers.
On her side, she had completely forgotten her original question about spring water by the time the first skewer arrived.
He ate the rest.
Bronze mutated meat seasoned with mutated plant spices.
A warmth spread through him after eating. Not just satisfaction, but a faint physique improvement, like the red heart fruits had given him, but milder and stackable.
Ranked food was not just fuel.
It was training, compounding silently in his body every meal.
After dinner, he checked on Moo.
The first silver hunting ant eggs were already in the nest.
And then Seongha pinged him again, this time with something she had been sitting on all day.
She wanted to form an alliance.
Not a verbal gentleman's agreement.
A formal structure with real instruments behind it. The dark world's dangers were far more numerous than either of them currently imagined, she said.
One person's strength had limits.
Partners survived better. He read her message twice.
She was right.
He had built fast, and the gap between him and the average survivor in his region was already significant.
But a silver mutated beast that did not respect territory borders was not a gap problem.
It was a threat that could end everything. Regardless of how many ants he had, if the wrong beast came at the wrong time and he was 200 meters from shelter without Moo nearby.
He thought about what their combined capabilities actually look like.
Seongha with plant cultivation that could produce mutated crops, ripening agents, cultivated seeds, and plant-based materials for medical production at scale.
Him with a beast-taming axis that grew smarter and stronger every day, medical supply via the bandage blueprint, and a scouting network that could map territory faster than any individual survivor.
They were not duplicating each other.
They were covering each other's gaps. He agreed before she finished her next sentence.
They established the alliance framework that night, each side cataloging what they brought and what they needed, the conversation running long enough that the stove needed a second log before they were done.
Meanwhile, in her shelter 30 meters up the trunk of a tree, wide enough that a dozen people would need to encircle it, Seongha bent over a work table arranging bottles of mutated plant extract by hue and viscosity.
Orange concentrates in the front for accelerators, pale green in the back for stabilizers, amber drops kept apart for the cross mutations she had not yet learned to trust.
Each bottle was labeled in a script she had invented herself, inherited from a botanist grandmother she had spent years following through greenhouses and growing plots.
Beside her on the table sat a golden scroll she had not used yet. Mutual aid contract, gold rank.
Select a target, establish a mutual aid contract.
Both parties cannot harm each other.
With permission, either can teleport to the other's shelter. Usage limit 5 times.
She had been thinking about who deserved it.
Now she knew. Outside her window, the giant tree's leaves rustled without wind. The one she called Little Green. The one she was secretly working toward restoring to something she called the Casimir World Tree, a name she still stumbled over when saying aloud.
Little Green responded to her work.
Little Green was patient, and in the morning she would finally use the contract.
Day 4 came in colder. Outdoor temperature -14, and the cold wave was still 6 days away.
Jonghyun stepped into the pen to check on the nest and stopped.
The silver hunting ant eggs Mo Woo had laid overnight had already begun hatching under the rapid development ability she had used while he slept, investing her own energy into the larvae to accelerate them past the normal timeline. 12 silver hunting ants stood in the pen, each the size of a large dog, carapace gleaming in the pale morning light, mandibles longer than his arm.
He stared.
These were not the fist-sized bronze workers he had grown accustomed to treating as small but capable.
These were the next rank entirely.
He reached out through the species contract to check one. Silver rank, 10-fold bite force, had become 100-fold.
Junior fortification had become intermediate fortification. A silver hunting ant's carapace, unstruck, felt like striking a steel plate.
Mo rustled at him from the nest entrance.
Master, more coming. He nodded and gave her more bronze board meat from the storage cabinet. She needed energy to keep the rapid development running, and he needed silver ants in numbers before the cold wave hit and locked him inside. The silver mutated beasts in the expanded territory were a problem he was going to solve proactively, rather than wait to be solved by.
He turned to the century ant colony. The century ant queen had been breeding hard since her bronze evolution, and her nest section of the shared pen now held over 300 workers with basic agility and beginner detection.
He split them into perimeter teams and sent them to the territory edge, the full 500-meter ring, with standing orders.
Find silver mutated beasts.
Do not engage.
Flee and signal.
The century ants were gone in seconds, a dark ribbon of them spreading through the snow and vanishing into the tree line.
He checked the farmland.
The multi-ear winter wheat was already heading again, a second crop nearly ready within days of the first harvest.
The red heart fruit seedlings Sangha was attempting to cultivate had sprouted in her own farmland. She had messaged him to report, and the branches he had brought from the mother tree were showing early signs of taking root.
If the cultivation succeeded, red heart fruit would become a renewable physique repair resource rather than a chest-drop luxury.
He walked to the workbench and began the morning's first task, bandage production.
He had enough materials for 12 more bandages from the supplies he had acquired the night before.
The workbench made the work steady, 9.5 minutes per bandage rather than 10, fatigue building slower, his hands staying precise through the midpoint of the session, where they had always started to drift before.
He listed 5 bandages on the trade channel with no world channel announcement this time.
Private listings only, no broadcast.
Will had warned him about advertising the bandage too broadly, and he had learned his lesson with the barbecue. The 5 sold within an hour, each above the price he had listed, buyers adding extra resources without being asked, as if they understood the item's real value better than the listing suggested.
He kept the other 7. Cold wave was 6 days out, and a stored bandage might be worth more than its trade value before this was over. A century ant signal pulsed through the contract, not the alarm for a mutated beast, but the quieter pattern he had started to recognize as information without immediate danger. He followed it south and found what the scouts had found, a frozen stream, barely a trickle under the ice, but flowing.
Clean water within territory.
He sent the hunting ants to break the ice surface with their mandibles and set up a collection point, then pulled a bucket from storage and started the transport relay.
The spring water fountain produced 100 milliliters daily, enough for the ants to drink, but not enough for irrigation at scale.
A flowing stream inside territory changed the math on both farmland output and century ant evolution feeding.
He marked the location on the manual's map function and noted a well blueprint would be useful if he could find or trade for one.
An hour later, another signal, this one sharp, the alarm pattern.
He found the century ants clustered at the northeast edge of the 500-meter ring, a dense group of them, all pointing the same direction and not moving forward.
He looked where they were pointing.
A silver mutated bear, larger than any bear on Blue Star, stood at the territory edge, with its back to him, nose lifted, testing the air.
Silver mutated black bear. Silver ranked.
Abilities: enhanced strength, advanced regeneration.
Advanced regeneration, which meant wounds that would kill a bronze beast would simply close on a silver one, given enough time.
He ordered the century ants back silently through the contract and retreated himself, keeping trees between him and the bear until the distance felt safe.
He checked the silver hunting ant count back at the pen.
22 now, with Mo Wu still accelerating larvae.
Not enough to be certain of a clean fight against a silver bear with regeneration. He marked the bear's position on the map and set a century ant watching team on rotation to track its movement.
If it was a roamer, the pattern would emerge within a day.
If it was territorial, he would know the boundary within 2 days.
Either way, he would not fight it blind.
He returned to the shelter and thought about the gene manipulator.
The boar gene fusion had taken a bronze hunting ant from fist-sized to small piglet-sized in a single operation.
A silver beast gene fused into a silver hunting ant was a multiplication he had not calculated yet, but wanted to.
The problem was that he had only boar blood to work with, and the boar was a bronze beast.
To fuse silver beast genes, he needed silver beast flesh or blood.
Which meant, eventually, the bear.
He said Mo-woo on maximum production and went back to the workbench.
The afternoon passed in production cycles, bandages, fences, occasional pauses to check ant counts and territory reports from the sentry scouts.
By mid-afternoon, the silver hunting ant count had reached 31.
He gave Mo-woo another portion of meat, and she rustled something that translated loosely as efficient.
He fed more meat to the gene manipulator research queue in his head and kept working.
Sang-ha messaged him mid-afternoon with an update on the red heart fruit cultivation.
3 of the 5 seedlings were taking poverty.
With the ripening agent applied correctly, she estimated a harvest in 4 days before the cold wave hit.
He almost replied with relief and remembered he was supposed to be the measured one in this partnership.
He thanked her instead and asked if she needed anything from his side.
She asked about a well blueprint.
He laughed quietly and put it on his trade channel search list.
She sent back a small text that simply said she had found the mutual aid contract scroll and had made her decision.
He read the item description she attached.
Gold rank.
5 uses.
Could not harm each other after activation.
With permission, either party could teleport to the other's shelter. He read that line twice.
Teleportation.
In a world where travel between regions was otherwise impossible, and alliances were enforced only by mutual interest and character assessment. A gold rank contract that physically prevented betrayal and provided emergency access to each other's shelter in a crisis.
If a silver mutated beast breached his perimeter at night, she could be in his shelter.
If her shelter was compromised during the cold wave, she could be in his.
He told her to use it.
A warm pulse moved through the species contract, not from the ants, but something adjacent to it, something that registered as connection established, and both parties' manuals updated to show each other's shelter as a linked location.
The alliance was no longer a gentleman's agreement.
It was infrastructure.
Evening came quickly, the cold advancing faster than any previous day.
Outdoor temperature -18, and the stove was running at full burn to keep the shelter's interior above 10 degrees.
He checked the cold wave countdown.
5 days.
He assessed his stockpile honestly.
Wheat, 30 gin harvested. Second crop, nearly ready.
Meat, 60 gin of bronze boar and rabbit combined, with the hunting ants consuming at a rate that would clear that supply in 9 days without resupply.
1,412 units.
210 units.
Bandages, 7 in storage. Materials for 12 more on the workbench shelf.
Silver hunting ants, 31 and breeding.
Bronze hunting ants, gene fused, 20. All operational.
Sentry ants, 341, covering the perimeter in rotating shifts.
By any comparison to the average survivor in his region, this was a comfortable position.
By the standard of what the cold wave would actually demand, he was not finished yet.
He opened a long DM to Will and asked for bulk meat.
Will was in his own shelter processing hides, smelling of beast blood and wood smoke, and replied within seconds.
He had been hunting the expanded territory all day and had 20 gen of mutated creatures across 3 species.
He also had something else, coagulation serum from a new source he had found that might drive the price down for them both if they coordinated buying.
Jung-hyun asked how.
Will explained there was a survivor in a nearby region who had a blueprint for a serum extraction process using beast blood.
A pipeline rather than an individual sales.
He had been thinking about introducing them.
Jang-hyun thought about the medical supply chain hypothesis he had been building in the back of his head since the bandage's first sale.
Well, connecting him to a serum producer would close one of the 3 material gaps in the bandage crafting chain.
He told Will to make the introduction.
The trade cleared 20 gin of mixed beast meat, 210 wood, and he set half the meat aside for Mo Wu's next feeding cycle and the other half to cure in the storage cabinet.
Cured meat kept longer, and the cold wave would make fresh hunting impossible.
He sat at the workbench and worked through the night's production.
6 more bandages. 30 fences for the outer perimeter where the cold had softened the frozen ground enough to drive stakes deeper.
A batch of small wooden buckets for the water collection station at the stream.
At some point past midnight, Mo Wu rustled from the pen.
Master, 38 silver. He got up, walked to the pen entrance, and looked. 38 silver hunting ants, standing in loose formation in the pen's open area, each the size of a large dog, carapace gleaming even in the stove's dim light leaking through the shelter wall.
Tomorrow, he decided.
Tomorrow, the silver bear gets a visit. He went to sleep. Day 5 arrived gray and still, the snow from 2 days ago now packed hard underfoot, and the daytime window down to 6 hours and 40 minutes. The sentry ants had tracked the silver bear through the night.
It was not a territory animal.
It covered the full expanded ring on a loose patrol that repeated every 4 to 5 hours, which meant predicting its position was possible, but not guaranteed.
He did not want to fight it on a patrol path.
He wanted it in the open, away from trees it could use for cover, without the advance warning of him approaching on foot.
He sent 12 sentry ants ahead as a decoy team and positioned the 38 silver hunting ants in 2 flanking groups hidden in the undergrowth at the 400-meter mark, where the ground opened into a clearing the bear had crossed 3 times in the night's tracking data.
Then he waited.
The bear arrived in the clearing 18 minutes later, nose down, investigating something the sentry ant decoys had left.
He gave the signal through the species contract. Both flanking groups moved simultaneously.
The bear reared up on its hind legs, 3 meters of silver rank mutated muscle with advanced regeneration and the intelligence that silver evolution had given it. And it was still too slow. 38 silver hunting ants closed on it from 2 sides, and the fight lasted under a minute. Advanced regeneration was not fast enough to keep pace with 38 sets of 100-fold force mandibles working in coordinated sequence. Each wound reopened before it could close, the carapace of the ants deflecting every swipe that connected.
When it went still, the clearing was quiet, except for the sound of wind through bare branches.
He stood at the edge, breathing steadily, and gave Mo Wu the signal to send workers to harvest. The silver bear yielded a silver beast core, dense, cold, heavier than the bronze boar's had been, plus 40 gin of silver rank meat and a hide thick enough to be armor. He held the silver beast core and thought about what the gene manipulator would do with silver rank genetic material fused into a hunting ant that already had bronze rank boar genes.
2 gene fusions available per ant after silver rank.
Silver bear genes on top of the existing boar fusion.
The calculation ran in his head for a moment, and he stopped doing the math because it was making him feel something close to lightheaded.
He carried the harvest back to the shelter, set the silver meat aside for Mo Wu's next evolution push, and looked at what had been built in 5 days from a stone axe that did not qualify as a ranked item. On the day Jonghyun woke up in a thatched hut the size of a toilet stall, 63 ants stole a fraction of a baguette, and he was furious about it. 5 days later, he killed a silver mutated bear with 38 silver hunting ants, using a scouting network of 300 sentry ants to predict the fight before it started. This was not luck. Or rather, it had started as luck. A bronze chest in a birch grove, a silver item inside it that should have appeared only 1 time in 10. And then it had become something else.
Every piece the Dark World handed him, he had converted into 2 pieces. The fountain of mutation became Mo Wu.
Mo Wu became an army.
The gene manipulator became a specialization injury. The bandage blueprint became a medical pipeline that no other survivor in his region had yet understood they needed.
The alliance with Sangha became a supply chain that closed every gap his combat axis left open.
None of it was accidental after the first item.
The Dark World had dropped 8 billion people into 10,000-person cells and told them to survive.
Most were grinding wood and hoping the cold wave came late.
Zheng Hen had committed to a path on day 1 and not deviated from it for 5 days, despite every temptation to want everything at once.
No berserk skill.
No Dragon Knight.
Ants.
The people in his regional chat who had called ants the weakest possible taming choice, who had sold ant-related items for pennies because nobody wanted them, were the same people who had spent 3 days chopping trees and were still short on resources for level 3.
The cold wave was 4 days out.
He had a level 3 shelter with farmland, pen, and workbench.
A medical supply pipeline that was already producing items the trade channel had never listed before his first bandage.
A scouting network that could map his territory faster than any individual survivor could walk it.
A silver queen producing silver hunters.
A gold rank alliance with a plant specialist whose tree was already larger than his shelter and still growing.
And a silver beast core from a bear that, 4 days ago, had represented an insurmountable threat.
He sat on the edge of the wooden bed and looked at Mo Wu through the pen window. She had her abdomen pressed to the floor and her antenna lifted toward him, not in alert, just in attention.
Monitoring, the way she always was now. He thought about his grandfather, who had raised him alone and who was gone before any of this happened, and the scroll he had used on the first night when the system revealed that supernatural items existed in this world.
Maybe one day they mutate into giant flying fire-breathing ants, he had told himself as a joke on day 1, sitting in the ruins of his Dragon Knight dream.
The silver bear core sat on the workbench shelf.
The gene manipulator sat beside it. He was no longer sure the joke was a joke.
Mo rustled.
Master.
The silver ones are asking about the core.
He looked at the shelf.
38 silver hunting ants standing in the pen, each already large enough to be terrifying, asking through their queen about the dense, cold object he had brought back from the clearing.
Not instructions.
Not a command chain executing orders.
Curiosity.
The silver evolution had given Mo Wu intelligence, and through her, something faintly adjacent to it was reaching the workers.
The silver hunting ants were not just tools anymore.
They were something in between.
He picked up the silver beast core and held it in the light from the stove window.
Dense, cold, heavier than it looked, carrying inside it the condensed life energy of a creature that had been dangerous enough to kill most survivors in this world the moment they stepped within its territory.
Tell them, he said to Mo Wu.
Tell them, this is the beginning.
Mo Wu's antennae moved.
In the pen, the silver hunting ants went still, heads lifted, the species contract carrying something that was not quite language and not quite signal, but arrived in his understanding as acknowledgement.
He set the core back on the shelf beside the gene manipulator, walked to the stove, added a log, and sat down at the workbench.
3 bandages worth of materials were already laid out from the morning.
He started working.
The cold wave was coming, and the territory was now his in a way it had not been on day 1.
But the Dark World did not give people territory and then leave them alone.
It gave them territory and then made the territory harder.
Level 4 would expand his ground again.
Gold mutated beasts would appear.
The monthly natural disaster after the cold wave would be something he could not predict from the information he currently had.
The 8 billion people on Blue Star had been sorted into a system that wanted survivors, not victors, that maintained scarcity in medical supplies and controlled the pace of advancement through every mechanism available to it.
And somewhere in the 800,000 regions, there were people like Sangha who had upgraded during the daytime on day 1, whose capabilities he could not fully reconstruct even after days of alliance and conversation.
The Dark World was not a game with a victory condition. It was a pressure that increased incrementally until the survivors who had not committed to a path were sorted from those who had.
He had committed.
He was not finished. Moo's next silver hunter eggs were already warming in the nest section of the pen.
The silver beast core was waiting for him to understand exactly what the gene manipulator would produce when silver rank biological material met a silver hunting ant with 2 gene fusion slots and a queen who could feed the results directly into the next generation.
The bandage materials on the workbench were waiting to become the next batch of an item that was already more valuable per unit than anything else he had listed.
Sangha's farmland was growing red heartfruit from cuttings he had provided, sandalwood for century ant evolution, and mutant wheat strains that produced yields no one in this world had seen from a single seed.
Will was somewhere across the Dark Continent processing hides and hunting bronze beasts, an honest man who paid above market without being asked and passed along supply chain connections as casually as he passed meat.
Yijichin was probably still hammering stone somewhere in his stone country territory, cursing the price of wood and being underestimated by everyone who thought stone's surplus was not strategic.
The dark world was not empty of good people. It was just structured to reward those who had the discipline to commit before they could see the outcome.
He finished the 3rd bandage, added it to the storage cabinet, and looked at the time remaining on the daytime panel.
2 hours and 14 minutes.
He had enough.
He walked to the pen, sat on the ground beside Mo Wu's nest entrance, and for the first time since arriving in the dark world, did not have a task in hand.
Mo rustled softly.
Tired, Master?
A little, he admitted.
She rustled again, the meaning arriving as something he could only translate as, "Rest then."
The army is awake.
He leaned against the pen wall and watched the silver hunting ants move through the pen, some circling, some still, some pressing mandibles together in a behavior he had not categorized yet, but suspected was communication at a complexity the bronze ants had never reached.
The sentry ants were at the plarder.
The cold wave was 4 days out, and he was ready enough.
Not finished, never finished in this world, but ready enough for what was coming next.
The dark world had taken 8 billion people from their homes and told them to survive or disappear.
Most of them were still trying to figure out what that meant.
Jang Yun had figured it out on day 1, somewhere between the 63 ants eating his baguette and the moment he realized that the gap between a useless skill and a world-ending one was not the skill.
It was the person holding it.
The silver beat core gleamed faintly from the workbench shelf across the shelter.
Mo Wu settled her abdomen against the pen floor, abdomen swelling already with the next generation.
Outside, the sentry ants moved in rotating shifts through the 500-meter perimeter, 4 pairs of compound eyes per ant, beginner detection active, nothing approaching without being seen and reported first.
The cold wave would come. The silver bear had come too, and it was now a gene source. Whatever came next would come to a shelter that was warm, a colony that was growing smarter, a supply chain that was producing things no one else in his region had yet thought to make, and an alliance with a woman who had upgraded her shelter during daytime on day 1, and whose tree was still growing.
He closed his eyes.
The stove crackled.
Mo rustled once more, very quietly.
The sound did not carry meaning this time, just presence.
The dark world was vast, and it was getting harder, and somewhere in it, 8 billion people were fighting to survive.
Jang Hyun had 63 ants on day 1, and a stone axe that did not qualify as a rank.
He had more than that now, and he was just getting started.